Hey there, and welcome to the Visibility for Female Founders podcast. I'm your host, Radhika Lucas, and this podcast is for you. If you're an impact driven founder, coach, or consultant who wants to find your own voice to speak, present, and amplify your message online, we explore how to get past the visibility roadblocks and grow your capacity to be seen so you can attract and chase your perfect audience while staying connected to the most important things by building a business that works around your life. Hey there, and welcome back to the episode. Today, we're talking about how to fall back in love with your business again. This is a visibility and self-leadership episode for female founders who feel disconnected, overwhelmed, or burdened by your business. And if you just need one more reason to believe again, then in this podcast, I want to share a few perspectives and give you some reflections to stop and think about in what I am coining this season of self-love. So I'm going to kick off by explaining all the 5 reasons why you might be in the place that you're in right now and why so many female founders might fall out of love with their business. The first of these reasons is that your work has no joy. The second thing that we're going to be covering is that you're just not quite sure whether this is going to be working out. You may have tried a few things and you may just be in a season of needing a bit more self-belief. You're just not sure whether this will work and you're looking outside of yourself for those solutions. The third is thinking posting is a strategy when it's not. Number 4 is really feeling the pressure to show up online while navigating many different environmental energies as well as navigating life itself. And the 5th one is really the fear of self-promotion and going against the grain of what everything that we've been taught that might be in conflict with what you are seeing online, which is the comparison versus your old identity. And I'm going to be unpacking all of these for you in this week's podcast, which I am so incredibly excited about. This is a jam-packed episode, so make sure that you have all the attention that you need just for yourself to enjoy this one. So the first one that I'm going to be talking about is that work has no joy. Now, I'm going to just mention that from at least a couple of conversations that I've had over the last week, I'm hearing one of 2 scenarios. And one is that they may have already built up a successful consulting business, but the work in itself was 12 to 14 hours a day, every single day, all kinds of hours, middle of the night or whatever, working across various different time zones. And now they might be wanting that scalability that comes with an online business. So this is the first conversation that I've been having just in the last week. And then the second conversation that I've had in the last week is that they left their job only to have a business that's now basically paying the bills. That is, if there is business predictability of being paid for the work when the invoices do get settled, only to make them feel depleted with the kind of work that actually is coming in the first place, causing a bit of resentment and not really wanting to do it because there's no motivation to keep going, which really does the opposite of injecting joy. And really the reason for this is that there hasn't been a single way to monetize your expertise through one single scalable offering while you take care of the meat and potatoes in your business to bring the scalable part of your business forward. And this is for the accelerators. Now, if you've taken my Visibility Foundations workshop, you'll know what this means, is that this is for the accelerators, for people who are actually already have that expertise and that IP built up, but you actually just need a way for people to bring people into your expertise and your IP and package it up in a way where people can actually access your expertise by leaning into what they need the most. Now, the second reason that I'm hearing is that there's a general sense of distrust, which is, I don't know if this will work. Now, I have said that we're in a season of self-love, but for this one, I'm actually going to be giving you some tough love. And you may not like hearing some of what needs to be said in this podcast, but if this statement is something that you have said or are saying when you are looking at investing in yourself in anything, any situation, any mentoring, coaching, or business development framework, whether it is to work on your voice, whether it's to work on your brand, whether it's to work on your messaging or anything, your website or whatever, this statement of this better work this time it actually puts the onus outside of yourself. Now, unless you are contracting out a service in which you have a set of deliverables that you are getting from a person, this better work. Well, what are the conditions that, you've got to ask yourself, what are the conditions needed outside of yourself for things to work? So, what I mean by saying is, if you are not ready to work for it and you need someone else to do the heavy lifting for you in your business, are you really being the leader for your business? Are you really leading yourself? And so, the thing that you may have invested in, the program that you may have invested in, maybe it didn't give you the return because in some cases there are some genuine situations where people have not delivered on the thing that they said that they would, in which case that is bad players, that's bad actor, that's bad on account of these people. However, if you haven't actually done the work yourself through the container that you were in, then does that onus really sit on the person, or does that onus sit on you? And I'm saying this completely as a person who actually has invested in lots of different things. And there have been certain things that I didn't fully take on and run with them myself. And that fully falls on me, and I'm taking ownership of that. So there's a little bit of this reframing that's needed of, I don't know if this will work, because you really need to be able to back yourself when you are going into a conversation with yourself on that topic, which is what kind of self-trust are you ready to put forward for yourself with knowing that you've got the support to carry you forward. So here are some practical things to think about. And what you really need is that belief in what you have to offer, and then the courage and motivation to make it work for you from the ground up. So I'm going to be giving you some tough love for this, and apologies in advance, again, if it offends, but it needs to be said. And that is, for every finger that's pointing outwards, there's usually four back in your direction. Now, entrepreneurship is the biggest project of self-development that you will ever take on. I have certainly experienced that myself, and which is why I'm sharing this with love, is that the one thing that I have learned from balancing both a job as well as a business is that building a business is bloody hard work. And building a business that has scalability is bloody hard work, because there are lots of different factors that need to go in to making a business work well from a scalability perspective. You'd have to have the volume if you're going for a really lower priced product in your business. So if you don't have the volume, you've got to compensate for it through income that you get from some other means while you're building the volume part of your business. This is really just simple maths. This is not rocket science. So think about the journey that you're on right now. And if you are thinking about setting up a scalable part of your business, then what you're really going to need to commit to is you're going to need to commit to having an income that can support you while you are building out the foundational stuff that you need in order to get volume into your business with your own IP, with your own expertise, with all of the life experiences that you've had. But it's not going to happen overnight. It's actually going to take time, effort, and energy, because anything worthwhile actually takes time. It doesn't usually happen in a sprint. A sprint is when you can come up with certain deliverables that you will get handed to you, and you run with them, you take them and you run with them and you make them your own, right? But you're not going to have something that's set and forget, turnkey, done for you, like you would do when you exchange a contract, say to build a house, a brand new house. You exchange dollars in exchange for a product that gets built for you, and all you have to go in and live in it. Well, a business is not exactly like that, because at the end of the day, if you don't have a tool that you can operate and operationalize, such as an app or something that actually helps people do something specific, then you are the face of your business, and your expertise and your IP are what you are selling. And it really needs you to be in your best optimal condition. And the pointing fingers and really looking at the ones that are actually pointing back at you are the most important piece of the puzzle in this whole process. So, coming back to the volume versus income model, which is the scalability versus a service-based business, is that if you lack systems and a proven offer that people have already paid you for time and again, then I'm going to repeat this. You don't have the luxury of saying you want ease and flow if you are just starting out. And because, as I described to someone just earlier this week, is that you can't have takeoff without thrust. Now, let me repeat that again. Hey, hey, now before you go much further, I just wanted to give you a little bit of an insight into what I am calling the season of love. Now, here's what I'm doing. I'm putting together a 4-week group plan, which starts on the 16th of January and finishes on the day of love, 14th of February. And in these 4 weeks, we are going to be helping you to fall back in love with your business. If you are feeling disconnected from your voice, if you are done with posting for the sake of posting, if visibility is starting to feel like a drag and something that you have to tick the box on, or if you are actually struggling with putting yourself out there in a way that feels more like you rather than ticking the box of being visible, then you are going to be getting reconnection with your voice, where I'm going to run you through the Find Your True Voice training, which you are going to be doing in your own time. And you get to have a one-on-one call with me during this period, which is a one-off call where I will help you unpack your voice. And then on the back of that, you then get to make an action plan based off of your voice themes. This is going to give you the vision and the actions that you need to take on the back of your theme, so you're not left floundering in the dark, wondering what exactly you're meant to be doing from here on. Then we make a plan on how to show up by falling back in love based on your themes. Here we create a 4-week plan on the back of doing the first 2 weeks to then help you to kickstart your visibility in a strong way into 2026. And finally, you get to make some agreements and accountabilities with yourself to help you stay on track that will always peg you back to the vision that you know that you need to hold as a leader of your business. So if you're wanting to find out more, check the show notes below for how you can join the Season of Love. You cannot have liftoff without thrust. And yes, that might mean that it might take some hustle. So there is some hard talking going on here in this podcast episode, which someone really needs to hear, because quite frankly, no one really talks about this as much as they really should. And so no one is actually going to bring you leads that convert easily without proving your own methodology. And I'm just going to say this with kindness, that actually sits with you. So this is actually as much about self-trust as it is about self-leadership and taking ownership, which is what part are you willing to play to get your content out there, and what part are you willing to play to validate and close offers when they're created. So that's something to ponder about. And you can have all the hand holding, but you can't expect to get to cruising altitude without there being enough pressure in the lead up to the liftoff or the takeoff so that you can get to cruising altitude. And that's my tough talk settled on this one for this episode. But I do want to offer you a gentle reframe despite everything that I've said, and that is that the way that you're thinking about this whole situation, which is this may not work this time, is that you may be basing your past results on future outcomes. And there's a really good way of reframing and looking at this. And there's a really strange life parallel that I wanted to share that will help with the penny drop, actually from my real life scenario. And literally, this has again played out this week, which is that I've been helping my son navigate through some challenging exams for which he did about some total of 2 days of work before he sat the test. And naturally, the outcomes spoke for themselves. Now, there is a olive branch being offered where he can resit that test again, but it does mean that his summer holidays will be taken up with preparing for the second chance. And so there is naturally a bit of built up, pent up tension about the thought about this sitting this test, because the data points that we have to look at are 2 days worth of effort for 1 day's outcome and results. Now, if you look at the results that you may have got or I may have got, I know fully well the results that I have got are fully on account of the work that I put in. It's directly proportional. It's all literally physics. Every action has an equal and opposite reaction. And when you decide on inaction, you will get the results of inaction. And so I will say this is that if you think about the two data points, which is the 48 hours leading into an exam or a test versus 2 whole months of daily practice and consistency in the lead up to the finale or the test, those two data points are completely different. And so the outcome that you might be looking at when you're asking yourself, is this even going to work, are based off of two very different data points. So you've got to really be able to compare apples with apples when you're looking at outcomes and thinking about whether or not this is going to work out, because you are actually starting to look outside of yourself when in fact a large part and a real key player in this whole situation is quite often the person itself and what they are or what they're not doing. And that is the reason why there are so many scaled offerings in the market, is because people understand that inherently carrying somebody else is impossible unless the person is actually willing to meet the market where they're at, through putting in the work, through self-direction, through self-leadership, through guided discipline and focus, despite all of the energies and things that might actually be affecting you. So I just wanted to leave you on that gentle reframe, given that I just laid into the second example a fair bit there with my tough talk on this particular topic, which I felt quite deeply about and spent a long time thinking. Now, the third thing that I have noticed why people fall out of love with their business is really thinking about posting as the strategy when it's not. Now, you can post all you like, but it's not posting that will get you sales. It's when you change your perspectives and with positioning and your personal brand, that is when people actually start knowing what you stand for and why, rather than just the how, and what you would sell and what your process is. And it's when people will actually start gravitating towards you. So post, but only post when you have formed your perspective and are not afraid to go out there and lay a stake in the ground for what you actually stand for, because that is ultimately what leadership is all about, is standing your ground and not ready to back down on your point of view just because you think someone won't agree, and because you have formed a perspective based off of your real life experiences, that if you haven't yet validated, you will be feeling that friction of, but what if I put myself out there and someone says something, right? So you've got to be able to be willing to validate your offering as you're going along, and which is part of the reason why the sales process in posting is so incredibly important, is because it actually helps to give you those micro wins as you're going along, from being not just about volume, but actually more about the breadcrumbs that you need to have along the way to validate what it is that you're going to be offering, and then with the view that you can then scale it with separate experts who can help you with the scaling side of the business. But more often than not, coming back to my previous point, is that a lot of the times people actually want to be able to get to cruising altitude without necessarily having the thrust or the work that you need to put in for the liftoff. And you will find yourself trying to clutch at straws with buying an AI course, with trying to create content with AI. Well, I'm just going to say this again. This might again upset a few people, but I'm really on a fire here today, which is you can't automate creativity you don't understand. So if you haven't yet created a magnetic system for yourself, where you know that from having put out the content, the people are actually gravitating towards you, and you've done that with any length of consistency, that is when the AI systems will play in with amplifying the existing impact that you've made in the marketplace. So I'll leave it on that one for there. But coming back to the point of posting is not the strategy, and it's really changing perspectives and your own core positioning that actually puts you front and center for what it is that you do and what you share, but without oversharing. The fourth point that I want to discuss is the feeling the pressure to show up online while navigating life. Now, there have been many times in my life when there have been endless energy swings that I'm managing. It could be from social media, with each scroll that I've taken at a fraction of the energy from the person whose perspective or POV that I was taking in. So I get that you don't want to add to the noise. But have you asked yourself whether the noise that you are perceiving is actually a glimpse into your own reality of what you're perceiving and what you're consuming? There certainly is noise, but people you will usually seek me out through that noise because they love what I stand for. And similarly, there will be people who will love what you stand for and is where you want your voice to shine and share your perspectives without the energies getting you down. Now, the second is, the feeling the pressure to show up online while navigating life, and could be the reason why you fall out of love in your business, is all of the energies from your environment. Now, we can't control the people around in our environment, but the cliche of we can control how we choose to respond to the environment has never been truer. And I will share that I've been in a negative environment and a negative mental state in the past. And I realized that I couldn't control my environment, but I could choose my response by giving myself the gift of micro wins, something that gave me a reason to wake up in the morning rather than not having a vision. And it was with putting one step in front of the other when I didn't know what else would work. It's the full and utter belief and giving myself and reframing the proof that I was giving myself, despite the fact that I wasn't necessarily always making big wins. But I knew that what vision I hold for myself, and that is the gift you can give yourself as a female founder, is the gift of vision, which will carry you through even through the darkest of times. So when you can't always overcome mental chatter and you just want to hold on to a single reason to believe, it'll be the vision that you come back to for your business, and is the reason why, despite there being pressure to show up online while navigating your life and circumstances and environment, and if you feel like you're falling out of love in your business, then that is the reason why a lot of people that I see struggle, is because they struggle to reconnect back with the vision that they may have had. And that quite often helps to open up a window or a gateway through my initial conversations when I first bring and onboard clients into my program Activator, is that the first thing that we do is actually help you get back in touch with your vision by understanding the whole map of your business. So that is one of the ways in which you can control the environment, by actually controlling your reality and how you respond to that. So the fifth thing that I want to go into is the fear of self-promotion. And this is very real because I've actually felt it myself. It's really about going against the grain and in conflict with what you're seeing. As people, we have been treated like sheep, where the flock stays together, and we have the sheep mentality of doing what everybody else is doing, because let's face it, standing out means that we're actually putting our neck out there. And I put it down and akin to being without night vision goggles in the middle of a savannah. You're out there and you can sense that maybe there are lions and tigers and all these wild animals. They can see you through their night vision, but you can't see them. And that is the feeling that sometimes I've had through this whole posting online situation, especially in the early days. And I tell you what, though, is that the fear actually is like an erosion in itself. It will chip away at you. It'll chip away at you, and it'll keep you exactly where you need to be. And it can be incredibly draining. Fear really keeps us from tapping into ourselves, because we go into this trap of shuttling between comparisons. So comparing what other people are doing, and then comparing what we're meant to be doing, and then looking at what somebody else is posting, and then looking at what we're supposed to be posting, and then looking at how somebody's done something with AI and thinking, wow, that must be great, so I need to do that with AI. And so no wonder there is that feeling of noise, which I mentioned earlier in the episode, which is really taking that comparison state of mind and replacing it with, what do I have to offer? My voice, my values, my identity, my POV. And I'm going to be sharing a little bit more of that in a second. But speaking about identity, it is the identity that we hold in ourselves, who we have been in the past. Someone who I was speaking to earlier last week said that the identity that she's had has always been behind the scenes and not really out in front. And so it can be a bit of a process getting from that old identity into a new identity, which is suddenly you're going from, or it could actually be the second example is a current client of mine who actually had an established business and was never actually the face of the business. So the business did the promotion entirely on its own, independently, without the founder necessarily needing to be the face of the business. And so there can be that shift between the identity that you may have once had versus, say, if you're starting out, then the identity that you have, that your family sees you as or your colleagues see you as, and then this new identity or this new brand where you'll actively be eroding the part of you that some people may have known you as, and you're building this new identity where people will be starting to get to know you as. And that shift in our own minds can actually be a lot more amplified than, say, for somebody else, because for somebody else, they'll be taking in the perspective, they'll be looking at the thing, and not everybody will agree with what it is that you have to say. And that's where the judgment does come in. That's where the fear comes in. But it's really about, again, being rooted back in that self-belief with the clarity of knowing what exactly you stand for. And with clarity then comes momentum. With clarity comes confidence. And so that's part of the reason why two of those are my themes, is that I really work towards clarity, because unless I give clarity to people, they're not going to be able to get the confidence that they need in order to then build on the connections that they need to have in order to then be successful in what they do. So a really big gift of my voice themes is clarity, because I'm seeking out clarity and looking at patterns and making deductions from the patterns that I'm seeing in the marketplace, and obviously sharing that within my podcast for you as a gift for me to be able to share the things that I'm learning so that you don't have to be finding out things the hard way. And that is really my hope for this podcast, is really about reframing visibility in a way that is specifically for female founders when there is so much noise out there. So I will just say that I could say a lot about the fear of self-promotion, and obviously Activate within my business is a place where people can sound more like themselves and offer that. But regardless of which bucket you're in, I'm just going to say I've covered 5 different scenarios, whether you are lost in the joy of why you started the business in the first place, or you're not sure of whether this will work, whether you're posting thinking you have to, then with a strategy that is platform agnostic, or if you're ready to ditch the energies from that are bringing you down or separate yourself from the fear of self-promotion, then before you either chuck it in or fall prey to yet another quick fix, there are only really 3 things that you will need to do to be able to speak and present online with your own unique perspective and with your own voice. And to do that as a female founder, you will need one of 3 things. One is you will need to create a single core offering that people can know you for. The second is that you will need to develop a voice that is based in 3 things: brand, positioning, and perspective, that will keep you top of mind. And the third is actually developing that unique sales mechanism to fill your pipeline and test and learn approach that improves over time. And what I'm going to say is this, that the execution of these 3 things is highly dependent on whether you are established with a proven offer and things that you have already done, and how much cred and authority you have in the marketplace, versus if you're just starting out. And the path to both these things are 2 very different things. So these are the 3 things that you will need in order for you to then feel like you can speak and present from a point of view, perspective, and brand that is uniquely yours. So if you are finding yourself ready to fall back in love with your business in this season of self-love, then, and if you're finding yourself speaking from either obligation, exhaustion, or perhaps strategy first thinking, instead of showcasing your voice with your values, building desire not only in what you offer, but actually falling in love with what you offer, and showcasing perspectives and positioning with identity shifting activities, and then sharing those insights that you can share through knowing what cards to hold and what cards to fold when you're sharing those insights, you're sharing without oversharing, and most importantly, with an embodied experience that showcases the impact that you're wanting to make and creating room for it, then know that the cue to this is your next steps, which is making a plan that helps you fall in love with your business again so that you can amplify your impact you want to make, because the exact execution of each lies heavily, as I said, on your personal circumstances. And if you want to know how to best do that, I've shared an opportunity here in this episode in the show notes to help you craft your next steps. So I'm going to close off this by saying that you can fall in love with your business by doing what feels like you again. I'll leave you with this soundbite, which I thought was really cool, which is your voice is your compass, your values are your structure, and your energy is your strategy. And when you bring your voice back to the center, everything begins to come alive again. One of the best ways in which I can help keep publishing content, if you're finding it useful, is just to take 2 minutes of your time after the end of each episode to leave a comment or give me a review on what you thought about the episode. Your feedback really helps to bring the podcast episodes to life. Let me know what else you would like to hear about, because your questions are what is actually going to help bring this podcast to life and make it your own. Have it as a place for you to be able to come back to when you're needing that little bit of inspiration. Now, the way in which you can do that is in the show notes below, which is if you're listening on either Apple Podcasts or Spotify, heading down to within Spotify, you can leave a comment on every single episode, or on Apple Podcasts, you can scroll right to the very bottom of my podcast and it gives you the option to leave a review right at the very end if you scroll all the way down to the end of all the episodes. This is going to help my content being found by more people, but it'll also help me to show up and keep me motivated. So leave me a review and let me know what your thoughts are if you have found this content helpful. Thanks so much.